Hi everyone, welcome again to Construction Corner. We give you information on how you're supposed to do your project, your construction project. After getting the architectural drawings, structural drawings, you need to know the cost of your project. You need a quantity surveyor. Joining us today is Bid Mwangi. He's a registered quantity surveyor. He's going to explain to us why you need a quantity surveyor for your construction project. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, pleasure. It's all ours, all mine.
I'm happy to be here today.
Yes. So kindly just give us a brief breakdown of who is a quantity surveyor in the construction industry.
Okay, a quantity surveyor, or commonly called QS,
Yes.
is a construction cost consultant,
Yes.
or a building economist.
Yes.
We are tasked with the job of giving budgets and being able to lead the team matters cost. So once a client or an architect has produced a design, it goes to the structural engineer, as your team has already been made aware of. There's that process of getting the drawings.
Yes.
So once you've gotten the drawings, now you link up with a quantity surveyor to be able to give you the cost of that design that the architect and the structural engineer have come up with.
Okay.
So basically that's where we get to be engaged in the construction industry.
Yes.
To be able to give the cost of the project. And every project is unique in a way that you cannot say, unless you're using a previous similar design,
Yes.
you cannot say two projects have the same construction cost.
Okay. So after I have my drawings now from the architect,
Yes.
I have the structural drawing.
Yeah.
That is when I approach a quantity surveyor.
Yeah, you can approach them at that point. Another way to look at it is they can have been engaged earlier,
Yes.
so that even as the architect and the engineer are designing the
Yes.
drawings,
Yes.
the QS could be in the loop, so that they could be advising even as the design work continues.
Okay.
Yeah.
So once you have the drawings, both the architectural and the structural, what do you provide to the client?
From the onset, this is usually called the pre-contract stage.
Yes.
The contract is when now the work has already started, so you link up with a contractor to give you now the work on site,
Okay.
the building works.
Yes.
So at that point, you require, there are different stages in pre-contract, there are different stages in post-contract.
Okay.
So in pre-contract, there are 4 unique stages.
Okay.
You have the preliminary design stage,
Okay.
where the architect gives layouts and you get to know the areas of the building that you're going to come up with.
Yes.
At that point, the QS gives something that is called a preliminary cost estimate.
Okay.
From the preliminary cost estimate, you get to understand the overall figure that you get. Is it within the budget of the client?
Yes.
Or do you need to do some level of value engineering either to bring it down, mostly to bring it down?
Okay.
There is no chance that you give a client a budget and then they're like, oh, I thought it was going to be this much, and
Yes,
maybe
yes,
you've
yes.
included everything that they wanted in the brief. Yeah.
So it's better to engage an architect. As you're engaging an architect, you engage also a quantity surveyor to help you to understand the cost of the project as you're getting the sketches or the first drawings.
Yeah, yeah. As you're trying to outline the design of the building,
Yes.
or the structure that you're coming up with,
Yes.
you will be able to understand the cost earlier, other than when you've really gone up to the detailed design and even production drawings, only to be shocked at the cost that the quantity surveyor comes up with. And at most times you find that you're called a vibe killer because the architect has come up with a very good design, the client has liked it, the structural engineer has made sure that the building will stand structurally, the columns, the beams, they are hidden, you are not being able to see them, but the building looks good. But now the cost gets in there, and then everybody is like, hey, wewe kwenye utaki tujenge bana.
Yes, that's normally the feeling.
Yeah.
So kindly also tell us the documents we expect from a quantity surveyor.
Okay.
Accept now the cost estimate first.
Yeah.
Then from there, any other documents we should expect while engaging a quantity surveyor.
Okay, good. From that point of the preliminary cost estimate, the next stage is usually called the schematic design, where now the building is taking form, the window sizes are being mentioned, the door size, the door type, the type of floor finish and all that. So from that moment, the QS or the quantity surveyor is able now to get more accurate estimates, which are called bill of approximate quantities. At that time, the BQ is forming the bill of quantities, but it is not final because the design has not been finalized. So once that you've passed the schematic design and you're still within the budgets of the client, you proceed to the next stage, which is called the detailed design. And this is where now you provide a more conclusive bills of quantities. And then once it's approved also by the client, because every stage the client has to approve, because it is matters cost, and it's very vital in the industry and in the project.
Yes.
So once that is approved, you go to the production drawing. This is just before tender, if you are going to tender. But if you already have a contractor on mind, the estimate BQs is now blanked out. The prices are removed so that you can be able to be fed by the contractor or a set of contractors that you might want to work with.
Okay.
Yeah.
So now we have our bill of quantities.
Yeah.
So this is what we work with in the construction.
Yeah.
Now on site.
On site, once it is priced by the contractor,
Yes.
it could be through tendering, which are two types of tendering. It could be open tender, where contractors all over are invited. It's free.
Yes.
It could be selective tendering, where you've chosen specific number of contractors based on the experience of the architect, the structural engineer, the QS. This could be contractors that they've worked with before.
Yes.
And they feel comfortable enough that they would like to work with them again because of various issues that have affected them in the past.
Yes.
In a good way.
Yes.
Yeah.
So what kind of elements would you say are contained in the BQ? Would you say maybe labor, materials? To what extent should we take the BQ as the guideline for construction?
The BQ can be also arranged in different ways. It could be a holistic BQ where the client has allowed the contractor to manage the entire procurement of materials and labor.
Okay.
It
So that's
could
a
be,
full contract.
Yeah, that's a full contract, bills of quantities.
Yes.
It could be that the client wishes to supply or have suppliers supplying materials to site, and the contractor produces laborers. So that's a labor contract. It could be also another way that the BQ is broken down such that there'll be different contractors achieving different trades in the building. There will be one to do the frameworks, there will be one to do finishes, and the finishes can also be separated further into, there'll be one doing joinery, there'll be one doing tile work, there'll be one doing the openings, which are windows and
So
doors.
now the subcontractors.
Yeah. So it usually depends with the brief that the client received from the architect on feedback on how they can implement their project. And usually it tends to take the direction of which the client is more comfortable, depending also on issue of funds.
Okay. So once you get your BQ, now you're able to know this is the cost of your project. So now, what if you go to site, the cost of the foundation that was indicated was $1 million, and you go to site, it goes up to 1.5. In such circumstances, how do you handle them as the project quantity surveyor?
The BQ has different sections which are measured provisionally, because by the time you're coming up with a BQ, you might not know fully or understand fully the extent of the groundworks. You could have had some pits dug to be able to know where you'll find the stable strata that will be able to hold the building. But once now the real excavation has been done, you get to find that that pit that you dug as a trial pit did not provide, did not reflect the entire area that you want to build. Yeah. So at that point, you get, the BQ also has an amount for contingency, where there are some funds that were set aside, say a percentage of the overall cost, 5 to 10%, which can be able to assist in such circumstances where an item was measured, but now work that has been done is more than what has been measured in the BQ. Those contingency funds are used to cater for those.
Okay.
Yeah.
You have said the word provisional.
Yeah.
Can you kindly elaborate on that?
Provisional sums in the BQ, or provisional elements measured in the BQ, usually once you can go to the elements that have been measured, is that situation where you're not sure what is provided in the ground. Another bit is maybe the design was not finished by the time you wanted to engage a contractor and break ground. So those items are given provisional figures, subject to when now you go to site and find out what's really going on. Most of the time you'd find that the figures work. Maybe you estimated a depth of 600 millimeters or 2 feet. You find the situation on the ground, it requires you to dig those 2 feet. So the provisions that were made are assumed that will work, and they work now on site. Other situations, maybe you went and provided a depth of 1.2 meters, which is around 4 feet. Some people understand feet and inches better to meters and millimeters. So you find that you provided 1.2 meters or 4 feet, but you end up digging up to 3 feet or 900 millimeters. So once now that you've established this is the real information on ground, you use those measurements in a process called remeasurements. Now when you revert to the figures that you are able to compare the figures in the BQ versus the figure that you get now on ground. So those figures that were measured provisionally are now converted now to actual remeasured figures.
Okay. Yeah. Something else, just maybe to get your clarification. If from the BQ, how are you able to get the actual costs of labor, material? How do you work around that so that the BQ is a bit accurate?
From the BQ, it's grouped differently. It has various columns. One that is usually the description of an element, say walling. The other item is the unit rate that you use to measure the walling. It's usually measured in length multiplied by height, so that's area, vertical area. So now the unit of measurement becomes square meters. Then in that square meter, the QS can be able to break down the components in a square meter of walling. The stones that are used in the construction, the cement and sand that is used in the mortar, the hoop iron that is used as reinforcement for walling. The QS is able to obtain market rates from different suppliers and come up with an average rate, and also be able to get an average rate per square meter for the labor part. And the rate is a build-up of materials, labor, and an element of profit for the contractor, because it's a business at the end of the day. So that's how you're able to come up with rates for different items. Another example I could give is tile work. You know what's the cost of a square meter of tile. You know what's the amount of labor that you require, and you know amount of mortar or grout that is used to lay the tile work on the floor. Yeah. So that's how the different prices are produced in the BQ.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so I've started my project. As you have said, I've gone, we have done the remeasurement. So what is provided to the client now as to what's the difference? Do you call that the variation?
Yeah, you can call it a variation. It can be an upward or a downward variation. An upward variation means now the project has gotten an overrun. Whatever budget you had, it has increased. The variation could also be a downward variation such that it's a saving. You had budgeted for this much, maybe you assumed you would be excavating 1.5 meters. maybe you are estimating that there'll be so much rock on ground, and then you find that the soil that you're building on is red soil. It's good enough. You don't need to go even the 1.5. Yeah, you might not even need to do the mass excavation. You had provided for backfill that you have to import from elsewhere. And the red soil that you have here on site is good enough to reuse for backfill, so long as it's well compacted. So those items that you had provided and you do not end up using, they become a saving. Once the other back flip of that is, you might have assumed the site is red soil. You find pockets of black cotton soil, which all of it has to be excavated. You have to fill the pockets that have been excavated. This was not provided in the BQ, and that provides an overrun. So the ground conditions are quite different, and majorly you'd find that variations, once you've surpassed the foundations or the substructure, the rest of the variations are easy to mitigate. Yeah.
So now there's something else. There is the difference between valuation and variation. Yes, kindly just elaborate just to differentiate.
Yeah, these ones usually occur post-contract or after work has begun on the ground.
Yes.
Valuation is usually the evaluation of work that has been done by the contractor on site.
Yes.
The construction industry has been set such that you can provide some funds to the contractor as an advance payment.
Yes.
To facilitate them,
yes.
Or to give them some cash flow.
Yes, to definitely finance the project.
Yeah. And give them some cash flow to be able to procure the first initial materials and pay for labor, set up labor camps, set up stores and all those that are required on site.
Yes.
So once that has been done and the contractor has begun work,
yes.
the QS from time to time, you get mostly it's from 2 weeks to a month.
Yes.
They come and check the quantity of work that has been done on site.
Yes.
If I may use a simple explanation of walling again.
Yes.
If the BQ provides for, say, something like 100 square meters of wall,
yes.
but periodic, because the contractor cannot build that in 2 days.
Yes.
It takes a while.
Yes, true.
So if by the time the QS has gone to site to check progress of work done,
yes.
and finds that the contractor has built, say, 30% of the wall, he prepares a certificate,
yes.
which is now called a valuation,
okay,
showing now the status of work that has been done on site,
yes.
as a percentage to the value of work that had been measured in the BQ.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's the definition of valuation. You value progress of work at the stage of which you have gone to site to measure the works.
Okay.
So every valuation should be a true reflection of work at that specific date.
Okay.
Yeah. When it comes to variation,
yes.
Variation comes from the word vary. Vary means to change.
Yes.
It means the scope of work or scope of the project has changed.
Yes.
It could change in terms of we've added something new.
Yes.
It could change also in terms of we have omitted something.
Yes.
So similarly, variation can be upward or downward.
Yes.
So if we've added something new, say we had just provided for paintwork,
yes.
to walls externally,
yes.
but now our client has been walking around and seen some stone design that yes. is unique and wants
stone cladding.
Wants to do some cladding to the walls,
yes.
instead of paint.
Yes.
Most often than not, you'd find that cladding is more expensive than paint.
Yes.
So now the QS is able to evaluate what's the difference in cost. If we put cladding to this area that we were to paint, what's the cost difference?
Yes.
That's a variation, yes. And it will be a cost increase to the project.
Yes.
Yeah. Another case could be same walling. We had allowed for paint, but now the client is like, we don't think that we require paint here. Yes. We can just do key, yes. The horizontal keys or the vertical keys to the wall, yes. The joints. Yes. And you'd find that keying the wall is cheaper than painting it.
True.
So that becomes sort of a cost saving.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the QS here acts as both an advocate for the contractor and the client.
So because the parties to any given contract, construction contract, is the employer or the client,
Yes.
and the contractor or the builder.
Yes.
The QS, the architect, the structural, mechanical, electrical engineers, all those are consultants,
Yes.
who are here to aid the success of the project. Yeah, they are not signatories to the contract.
Yes.
So they should act impartially.
Yes.
So whenever you see that something has happened and it's in the favor of the contractor,
Yes.
don't fail to mention it and don't fail to execute it.
Yes.
Same case when it comes to the client.
Yes.
Yeah.
In case of a saving to the client.
Yeah, in case of a saving to the client, make sure it's mentioned and recorded that this will give us a saving.
Okay, so at least you have given us a brief breakdown of what the importance of having a quantity surveyor on your project.
Yeah.